John. It's good to see you.
It is great seeing you, Sean. How are you doing?
I am great, thank you. How are you?
Doing great.
Good, good. What is on your mind this week?
Um, I read an article in Psychology and Health that just talked about a recent article. The name of it, I just wrote it down here. It's How Habitual is Everyday Life, an Ecological Momentary Assessment Study. And it's by researchers out of uh, Surrey and New Zealand and South Carolina that kind of joined together to write it. And it's basically saying that almost everything we do during the day is based on habits instead of choice. We just fall
Mm.
into habits to do things instead of making choices to do it. Um, which reminded me of a great story that one of my professors in grad school told. It was Alan Gardner, who he and his wife, Beatrix Gardner, were the ones that conducted the studies of teaching chimpanzee sign language.
Yep, I
And
remember.
yeah, okay, so like Washoe and Tattoo and Dar, and
Mhm.
they were teaching them sign language to see how other primates processed language. And so I was taking his class about comparative psychology, and he told this really interesting story that's kind of a backstory that's not in the literature that much, but it's a story from the 1930s and 40s when Ivan Pavlov was practicing. You remember the Russian psychologist
Yep.
Pavlov with the
His
drooling
dogs,
dogs? Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Pavlov's dogs. Um, there was a lot of research being done at that time, starting to be done with chimpanzees, looking at chimpanzees for to look for to try to understand human cognitive processes. And Pavlov was against that because he said we're so different. You can't compare a chimpanzee and a human. And other people were starting to do that and saying, yeah, there's so many similarities in how the brain is built, how it functions. We can learn from primates and other primates. And he set out to do. He did a study that my understanding, it was never published in a journal, but he presented it at a conference as an argument against this idea. And the study was he had in his lab he built a wall and cut a hole in it in this false wall, cut a hole in it, and on the other side he put kind of on a little stool he put a bucket of treats, so you could reach your hand through the hole and grab a treat out. And so the chimps learned that really quickly when they were in the room. But then he took one of those little canisters of propane, so he could create a torch, and lit it so that there was heat between. As you started to reach through the hole, it was between the wall and the treat. So as you started to reach through, it was hot, and they would withdraw their hand really quickly, so they couldn't get to the treat. But beside the hole in the wall, he had a cup on the floor and then a bucket of water next to the cup. And when they would take the cup and throw water through it, and it didn't have to be perfect, just throwing water at the hole, they would turn the burner off and allow them to get their treat. So they learned very quickly to associate that if I can get water in my cup and throw it at that hole, then I can get the treat.
Hmm.
So then, after he trained them that, he moved the bucket further away, left the cup by the wall, but they had to walk further away to scoop water out of the bucket. And so the chimps would do that. They'd scoop water out, and then they would kind of walk back on all fours, holding the cup and spill most of it, but still throw a little bit on. He would let him get the treat. Then he put a little bridge over a pool of water and put the bucket way on the other side. And he found out that he showed that the chimps would cross the bridge and walk a little ways to get the water out of the bucket and then cross the bridge back to go throw it against the wall so that they could get their treat. And he said, see, I told you chimps were stupid because they could have stopped at the bridge and gotten the water. That would have been a lot easier. But they're
Right.
too dumb to understand that, was basically his point. I don't think he used those words, but that was the gist of his argument, which Gardner and others took offense to that that interpretation, but it did lead to a whole new type of research, because a lot of the people in the room who saw that said, wow, that really explains some parts of human behavior. Because how many times do we do things the hard way when there's easier solutions? Because we don't stop to, every time we do something, we don't stop and try to figure out the easiest solution. If we already have a solution, your brain uses heuristics and shortcuts. I already know that if I just get something out of the bucket, that's going to work. So we do so many things by habit that take more time and effort because it's a habit. And so it started this whole new uh, line of research on learning about like one trial learning, and there's just a whole nother, and habits and habitual behaviors kind of opened up based on that. But it reminded me, even now in 2025, so 80 years later, um, we're still looking at how much of a role habits play in our daily behaviors. I just thought it
Yeah,
was
I
interesting.
know that. I know the point was, chimps are not as smart as humans. Don't I get that? But I didn't want to come across as too harsh. But there are some parallel examples of humans doing the exact same thing.
Yeah,
To your
exactly.
point, you walk across the bridge over water to go to a bucket of water,
Hmm.
instead of just getting water out of the nearest source. But again, not an exact example, but there are parallel examples of me doing, and I'm probably not a great example. I'm not that far from a chimp, but I know that just that humans, I'll tell you, John. I mean, there are times where I do something, and then I stop and think and go, I passed two waypoints that I could have done
Yeah,
this, and I did.
exactly.
I did this other thing. Why did I do that? And it's because, again, like there's I think a variety of reasons, but I'm not paying enough attention in the
Hmm.
moment to what's going on. I'm just on autopilot. Like I know I got to do this thing, and it's like, and I just autopilot my way through it. And then later, when I reflect back on it and go, that was dumb.
Mm.
I could have done that so many different ways. Why did I do it that way?
Yep.
And again, it's the example. I walk across the bridge over the water to get to the
Hmm.
bucket in the corner. I've done it. I do
Yep.
it too often, probably.
Yeah, exactly. I was just starting to say I do that so many times every day. So I can't fault the chimps either, because I feel like I do the
No.
same thing. So, and yeah, we all, how many times do we do that? That's the interesting thing. And yeah, I don't want to be put up against chimps in a intelligence test either, because I'm not sure I'm that much smarter either.
Yeah, I don't know how well I would fare against them. I think I do know, and it's disconcerting. So, um, but you're back to like the idea of what I really seized on. I like that story, and I found that really entertaining. But the idea that the percentage of my day that is run by habit,
Yeah.
and then when I peel that back a little bit, as we've discussed, as you've taught me and the listeners, we build those habits. Those are
Agreed.
I've put in the work to build the habit, and then I just let that thing kind of run my day to day, unless something, gets in the way, or some on channel disruption that has to step in. Like I'm just running on habit.
That's so much easier.
It's easier, but it's also like I'm not super comfortable with that idea. When I think about how many times, again, I do extra work,
Hmm.
or I quote unquote screw something up because I leave it to my back channel to just kind of run it.
Yeah, an interesting way to look at it too is in talking about how much extra work you do. So that's extra steps to cross the bridge and to come back across the bridge. So that takes energy and that type of thing. But thinking also takes energy, and it takes a lot of energy. When we're trying to figure something out, it's amazing the amount of energy we use. And that's why if you've really wrestled with a problem before and struggle with it, trying to figure it out, just sitting on your couch, trying to figure something out for an hour, you're exhausted afterwards, as if you've just done some work or whatever, because it's using resources in the same way. So if we weren't using habits, And every time we would say, oh, I'm going to burn my hand if I reach that treat, I've got to figure out something to do. Let me start all over and try to figure this out. Then every time you would be using a lot of resources, where a habit allows you to go, I don't have to use resources. I just scoop this water and it's over there now. I'll just get it and scoop it. So maybe it's not using that much more resources, but I don't know. And probably faster than having to stop and think through it and think what would be an
Yeah.
easier way.
And I'd probably take 20 naps a day if I did it that
Yeah.
way. I'm just mentally exhausted. I mean, but I'll tell you, like, I slept great last night. I got over 8 hours of sleep. I've had coffee this
Awesome.
morning. Right now, I feel great. I can tell you that by the end of this show,
Hmm.
because I'm trying to stay mentally engaged, right? I'm listening to everything you're saying. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. Whatever cognitive effort I put into this for an hour, at the end of this, I do kind of go, I am exhausted. I need to
Hmm.
take a beat.
Yep. Yeah, no,
And,
that's
and
right.
like you said before, it feels like I've done a physical, like a workout,
Hmm.
like an exercise routine. Same thing.
Yep. Same thing. Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
right about that. Yep. Definitely.
So I wanted to. I had this happen to me this weekend. So I'm old, and I don't think I have to tell anybody that, but I
Yeah.
still love going to the mall. Near me, we have a great mall. I love that mall. I go to the mall. So we're at the mall, and they have these kiosks in the middle of the mall. It's not an
Hmm.
actual store front, but there's this guy selling this artwork, and I walk up to it. And in just a couple episodes, we talked about wonder and awe, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I go over and I'm looking at this picture. It's not a painting, I don't think, but either way, it's red and purple and gold, and it has this design to it that as I'm standing there looking at it, it looks like it's moving.
Mm.
This
Just
optical illusion, right? I mean, it's a static picture, but the way that the colors, I don't know what it is that the choice of colors, the design of and so it was like it wasn't arms, but it had these like squiggly,
Mhm.
designs going out. And when I look at it, it looked like it was turning a little bit. And
Mhm.
every time I kind of glanced away and looked back at it, it moved. And I stood there. I don't want to admit how long I stood there staring at this picture, just going, "What? How? How
How's it
did?"
moving?
So many questions. Number one, how is this picture moving? It's static. Number two, who figured out that a color scheme or a design? I don't even know. So let me just kind of like calm down a little bit because I'm getting all excited to hear about. Let me just start with this. Like, what makes my brain think that picture is moving when I know it's not?
Well, you started at the right point, because it is your brain that's making you think that, because
Okay,
it's not
see, I've,
moving.
I've come this far. I know it's my brain.
It's not the picture, because a lot of
It's
people say,
not the
what is
picture.
that picture doing? The picture's not doing anything. So it is your brain. And I love these. So these are motion illusions. So instead of optical illusions, they're referred to as motion, but it's a type of optical illusion. But usually
Okay,
optical illusions are a little bit, but yeah, emotion. Sorry, not emotions, illusion,
no,
motion
motion
illusions.
illusion,
So you
not
think,
not an optical. I called it an. I thought it was called an optical illusion. So it's called a motion illusion.
yeah, and
Okay,
I would let people buy with I mean, it's kind of a type of optical illusion. Just to like nail it down specifically, the type is a motion illusion. So it's an illusion about movement.
oh, that
And
okay, that makes sense.
this
Yeah,
is
okay,
where it this I love illusions like this, because the picture is just sitting there and you get all these weird experiences from it. And it's has to do with, so I'll give you kind of the neural reasoning for why this happened, the brain reasoning for why this is happening. um, so it might take a little bit of background explanation, but there's neurons in our brain that process certain things. So the visual system, when it takes in information, I've talked about this before. It goes first, kind of the first cortical area, the wrinkly part of your brain, the first wrinkly part of your brain to receive visual input from your eye is right at the very back of your head, and it's called the visual cortex. And V1 is right at the back, and it starts trying to detect edges and those types of things. And then it sends that information on forward and starts processing it more deeply. And when it gets up to like V4, level 4 is when it adds color. And then V5 is where it adds motion. And so that's where that's where the motion illusions come from, is area V5 in the brain, because the neurons there are set to detect motion, and it's really changes. So when V1 starts to look at edges and shapes, there's like lines that start lining up. Those are lined up based on the input that the visual cortex is receiving from the retina in the eye. And as light patterns change on the retina, that gives different information further in the brain. So the brain's processing that. And the reason I'm bringing in the retina as well is because this motion, if you stopped, like if you could stop the eye from getting new information, and there's ways to do that, then vision fades out. The eye needs new input every few milliseconds for vision to continue. And that's because our cells adapt. Like when light's hitting it, they start responding really fast and they fatigue and tire out, and then they stop responding. So light needs to move. So the solution to that is our eyes have saccadic eye movements where they jitter, just barely jitter. And that little jitter allows you to stand very still and just stare at one thing and not lose vision. So I'll go a little bit further and tell you that, like comparative psychology, that owls, the birds that sit in trees and hunt mice and stuff, that are so good at just sitting there and they look so smart and wise, they're one of, I don't think they're the only bird, but one of the only birds that their eyes are forward facing instead of sideways facing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have saccadic eye movements. So they just sit very still and their eyes don't move and their visual world fades out. So they're not seeing anything unless something moves. And that movement across their retinal cells spark that to, oh, I'm going to respond again, and sends a signal that that's moving right there. So it's like everything fades out, almost like you're looking through a ping pong ball at the world, like cut a ping pong ball in half and look through it, and everything's just kind of that white frost phase is probably something like they're seeing, until that little mouse moves or something moves and they lock right in on it. Then their focus goes there. Then when they fly, their whole visual world lights up again, because now they can see everything, but they've already locked in on their prey. So our eyes have saccadic eye movement so that we don't really lose vision. But if there's drops to eyes, like surgeons that are going to do surgery on your eye will put drops in your eyes that paralyze your eye muscles, and then your vision kind of fades out unless you move your head. So they'll put your head in a clamp and they'll cover your eye, and you just kind of lose vision. People, can still be awake during the surgery and talk about that. So
Yeah, I had that. I had uh, what do you call it? Laser eye surgery 20
okay,
some years ago. But I was laying there awake, and they, put those drops in, and I couldn't move. I couldn't see anything, quote unquote.
because
But
your world kind of faded out, right?
yeah, it was
Yeah, yeah.
a really weird feeling.
Yes, yeah.
Very, yeah,
So,
unsettling.
so the reason I'm telling all of that is because those little squiggly lines in the picture, if your saccadic eye movements are telling your brain, I'm getting something a little bit different each time. If it's a straight line, your brain is going, yeah, I expect that straight line to be there. But those squiggles at the different angles they are, trick your brain into thinking something's moving a little bit. So as you stare at this picture, it looks like it's moving around. And as it gets further out in the periphery, it looks like it's moving even more. So you can
Hmm.
stare at different parts and it will move in different ways, giving that illusion of movement when it's not there. So that's one. There's many illusions of movement. So motion illusions. That's one of them. Is just the static, and also with static, it's not just looking at that picture, but if you are, this just happened to me, and we just drove. I told you that we went. I live in Kansas, so we went west to a wedding. You would have had to gone east to the wedding, but we
Yes.
went to Idaho to a wedding in Ketchum, Idaho, for Casey's nephew, and we decided to drive because I love the scenery out through Colorado, Wyoming, a little bit of Utah, and
Beautiful.
then into Idaho. It's just beautiful all through there.
Yeah.
And I was driving in Idaho. We decided when we left to come home, we got up early because I had to get back. We left the hotel early. It was still dark outside. And we left and got out on a 2-lane highway, kind of trying to cut through to catch a major roadway in Idaho. And it was this long highway that kind of would bend around. I couldn't really see where it was going, but I saw another car coming towards me in the far distance, and it was pitch black out. There's no street lights, and it was just black, but I could see its headlights. And it looked like all of a sudden I was thinking, wait, is that an airplane? It looked like it was taking off a little, like it was getting higher. Then it like dropped back down, and then it looked like it was moving. And it was this really strange phenomenon. I was going, what is happening? And then when I got up to it, it was a car. As it got close, it locked in. I could tell, oh, that's, the car on the highway, which I knew it was a car, but like it's just on the highway. And the road didn't dip or turn like I was seeing it dip or turn. And that's another form of static motion illusions where when you drive at night, a car can look like it's drifting. If it's a kind of a featureless highway and there's really no context to it, it can seem like it's moving when it's not, in ways it's not. Or if you're staring at the sky at night, stars can, the wandering star effect. It looks like all of a sudden some are moving, then they're not. And it's just that there's no context for it. It's just a light, and my brain's trying to make sense of it, and it will create motion when it's not there, just because that M5 area of the brain is active at that point.
And so going back to the car, when you're saying it creates motion, is it the lights? Because you said it's dark.
Right.
Uh, is it the way that the light is hitting, the headlights are hitting, or
No,
what?
it's more so it's when it's usually when it's further away, so the lights are smaller, and
Okay.
there's no contextual information. There's nothing to tie that car to. You can't see the road, you can't see the horizon. If you could see the road or the horizon, then you would go, "Oh, I see where that's at. That car is kind of tied to the road, so to speak." But there's nothing to tie it to anything, so it just looks like lights are floating in space, which it can add that motion because there's no other visual cue there to attach it to, so it can look like it's floating.
Okay. Okay. But do lighting? I'm thinking about motion. I'm trying to find other examples in my life because I brought up the picture I saw, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, well, like billboards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of other ways that um, can kind of spark that movement in my
Okay.
brain.
Yeah. So like if there's lights on a billboard
Yeah,
that makes so like Vegas is famous for this. They have so many signs that looks like everything's pointing down, like come here, like it's pointing down, but the arrow is just a series of lights. If you get up really close to them and just stare at one bulb, it'll come on and it'll go off for a while and it'll come on. It doesn't seem special. But when you step back and look at it in context of all the bulbs, the timing of how they light up creates the effect that the sign is either there's a circle being drawn around the sign or there's arrows pointing some way, and it just goes over and over. And you get this sense that things are just really moving and happening when nothing is moving. It's just lights are going on and off. And that's called the phi phenomenon, PHI.
PHI,
Yeah. So from the
fee.
Greek letter phi, yes. So it's a
Hmm.
phi phenomenon. It's when lights flashing kind of alternate and flashing create a motion illusion.
So there is some light effect that if it's timed a certain way or a certain pattern, it can trick the brain, so to speak, into seeing motion.
Yeah, and if you have two or three bulbs go out, it kind of starts to deaden the effect a little bit. It gets harder to see. You still can kind of see it, but after a few go out, then it just looks like some lights just flashing in place versus moving. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so like your cell phone, when you're loading something onto your cell phone, you have that little circle that lights up and it looks like it's moving in a circle. It's just
Hmm.
lights going on and off. It's just the timing of it. It's like those little lines are already all in place in a circle, and they just light up and then fade out. And it looks like something's moving in a circle to tell you your phone's working. So that's perceived motion or a motion illusion.
It's not actually moving. You're right.
That's not
That,
moving, no.
that's the one that's hurting my head the most. The phone. Why'd you do that to me? You're right.
Well,
So go ahead. Go
you
ahead.
love movies.
I do.
Movies, that's the phi phenomenon is movies. It's just still pictures shown one right after another in quick succession, which gives you the experience that everything's just moving.
That's
Because
not true.
that's,
Don't that can't be true.
you know, that's true.
Yeah. So I'm looking at pictures on a screen, but they're moving. They're being shown and replaced fast enough
Uh-huh.
that it's a movie is actually an illusion of movement.
It's like tens of thousands of pictures that are just shown one after another. And so, like those little flip books, you can flip through the pages and see like Bugs Bunny pull a carrot out of
I
the ground or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
same. It's just those pictures just shown. And if you slow it down, you flip it really slow, it's not quite as good. Or you flip it too fast, it doesn't work. You can kind of play with it till you go, oh, that looks just right. The speed that
I
you're
used
flipping the
to I used
pages.
to draw this little guy on a motorcycle going up a ramp and then jumping
Yeah,
off the ramp, and I
yeah,
could flip the pages and it looked like a movie, but that's
that's
not what
awesome.
movies are.
It is.
They they
It's what.
film they film these movies on a reel, and that's what I'm watching movement. But yeah, so in all
Yeah.
seriousness, I'm not that dumb. I'm close,
No, I know.
but
You're not.
so a movie is maybe the best example you've given me yet
Okay.
in this, in that it's thousands of pictures,
Hmm.
still pictures, being shown and replaced at a fast enough rate that my brain sees movement.
Well,
It's
what is the rate? Do you know? It's like, isn't it 40 some pictures a second or something like that? I don't even
I thought
know.
it was I thought it was 60 frames per second, but I
Okay. Yeah, maybe so.
don't quote me on that. I just, for some reason, I see 60 FPS
Hmm.
as the number, but
Okay. So imagine 60 pictures each second for an hour and a half movie, like a 90-minute movie. That's a lot of pictures that are being taken. But that
yeah,
the movie cameras are just clicking pictures so fast that they can take 60 pictures per second.
right.
They're not having to push down like we do. That'd be a really slow. You'd get 2 pictures a second. That wouldn't show much movement. Although, have you ever had your phone, like you'll take several pictures of, like, people will be standing in a group and you'll take a picture and then wait and then take it and you'll take them kind of, but they're all kind of posing the same, and then your
Yeah.
phone puts it together where it's like it shows them like back to back with like a half a second apart, and it's kind of this jerky movement. That's the kind of the jerky movement if you slow it down a little bit, because it's not smooth. And our brain, so I'll go a little bit deeper. Maybe this will
Okay.
blow your mind more, but
Oh,
that's how
great.
our brain sees the world, is in short pictures. And then because we perceive the world a few dozen milliseconds after something has already happened, because by the time light strikes the eye and goes all the way back and this image is built, you're already, a few dozen milliseconds behind what's actually happening. Our brain, to cover for that, our brain predicts what's going to happen about 100 milliseconds into the future. So we're living kind of on these expectations of what's going to happen. And that's what allows us to be kind of caught up to real speed, but also gives us smooth motion. So it's not really jerky motion, it gives us smooth motion. And there's a disorder that that doesn't allow you to see things smoothly. It's like you picture your world as your brain is processing it. It's called a kinestopia or a kinestopia. Some people say, I'm old school, so a kinestopia, a kinetopsia, sorry, a kinetopsia, which is motion blindness, and that means you can't see motions. And that can
How
be
did?
very disturbing to people.
Well, that's disturbing just to think about it.
Yeah.
So the V5, something happens to that area of the brain,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Whether it's genetic or trauma or
It's usually like a
something.
stroke or something like that. Hmm.
Okay, but then how do I see the world in snapshots that don't
In
stream together?
snapshots. Have you ever been in a room? I know you have a room with a strobe light, or like
Yes.
a club or something, a strobe light where
Well, I've
people are
been in a
just kind of
room with a
moving.
strobe light. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just you run into each other and you laugh and you're having fun. And you try to jump around. It's just like these still shots. That's kind of how people with a kinestopia see their world. Yeah, I keep getting the S's mixed up. It's a kinetopsia. A
Is that another
kinetopsia.
Greek word?
It's a combination of Greek words meaning not seeing motion.
Oh, okay. So there's
Yeah.
a disorder where you can't see motion.
Yes,
Just-
yes. That would be easier if I said that instead of the word. But
uh,
anyway, it's where uh yeah, you're what you're processing is the snapshots because that's how you see your world because V5 the area has been lesioned in some way from a stroke or whatever. So now you can't put that smooth motion together. There's a famous case, and with famous cases, they would always give the person's initials instead of their name, just to protect the person. But it's I think it was ML or LM. I think it might have been LM was the person. I always like mentioning them just because they gave their time and effort to science to improve science. But they had lesions, I think, from a stroke, and they couldn't perceive motion. So their descriptions, um, and I'm thinking back here to when I was teaching this, but their descriptions was like it was difficult for them to pour liquid into a cup because by the time it was like the liquid just looked like a glacier sitting in the cup, but then it would be just a little bit more of a glacier and a little bit more. And when it would get to the top, they would stop pouring it, but it was already overflowing because they couldn't see the speed it was rising. They would just see different places where it was just a chunk of glacier and they would try to stop and they couldn't. They said when they tried to cross the street, it was terrifying because they couldn't judge the approach of cars. So they would look and the cars were way in the distance and they would think, I wonder how far. And then it would look like it was just a little bit closer. And then it'd be like right there. And so that was really scary to them. They said it was difficult to have conversations because the person's lips wouldn't move. It's kind of like, and I would tell students, it's like when you're on like a video call and the screen freezes and then it moves to something else, you can still hear their voice, but it's like their face freezes in different positions, but yet you're still hearing the voice, and it was like disconcerting. And this was back in like I think the 1970s or 1980s before there were video phones. So nobody had that experience of a glitch where the phone froze. It might be easier nowadays. But
yeah.
yeah, just things like that were really difficult for this person, for her to deal with just everyday things because of this motion blindness that she had.
So going back, because I'm trying to piece together this thought, but you were talking about part of the process for I don't want to say normally functioning
For typical
motion, but
motion
part of it
perception.
is the predictive ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too, is
Mm-hmm.
because you go back to the water, and I know that it's more of like by the time your brain gets the message that the water has reached the top, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also a piece of the brain that's predicting,
Mm-hmm.
kind of trying to get ahead
Yep.
of this, and that your brain can't predict that cup being filled up
Mm-mm.
because it doesn't have motion. It doesn't have that same sense.
Nope.
That's
No,
correct
that's
then?
that's correct. So this is one of the kind of disorders that we can experience because a lot of them we can't. We've talked about similar disorders on this podcast before, like prosopagnosia, which is the inability to see a face. So
Right.
you can't see face, or agnosia, where you can't see objects or identify objects. And then we talked about achromatopsia, which is colorblind. You can't see color. So these are
Hmm.
different parts of the brain that gets disrupted. So you can't see color, you can't see a face, you can't see a form, or you can't see motion. This is just another example of it. But in this one, you can't really know what it's like to have prosopagnosia and not be able to recognize a face. But this one, we can get a sense of what it is. Just turn on a strobe light, and then you get the effect. Like, try to pour a glass of water in a strobe light, and you'll get that exact same effect. It'll look like there's a glacier that's kind of rising up. And I mean, I think she used the term glacier, but it just looks like a block
Right.
of water, and it's usually the picture, the snapshot you get, it's sloshing. So that's, I think, why it looked like a glacier to her, because it wasn't just even, it was sloshing, but it was frozen at each, location. So you can get that
Maybe,
sense.
yeah, maybe an experiment listeners can try at home if they want to take the time and effort, and
Hmm.
but get a strobe light, turn off all the lights, and try to pour a cup of water.
Yeah, you would see what somebody with motion blindness, kind of what they experience, what they go through.
Okay. Okay. I might try this. I don't know. I got to find a strobe light.
Yeah. Anyway, it kind of tells us that perception is modular. We've talked about that. There's different parts to it, like color, like processing faces or shapes. So there's these different modular things, but it also shows that time is constructed in our brain, because without this part of the brain, our brain is actually just receiving snapshots of what's happening, and we add our brain through its predictive ability, adds that sense of smooth motion, which is important for survival if you think about it. Because if you tried to get away from a tiger in a room with a strobe light, that would be really difficult, especially if the strobe light didn't bother the tiger. It would be really hard. You'd be running into things, and yeah, you wouldn't last long. Or to try to
Yeah.
catch something, or like even if you had tools to, I mean, because I'm thinking back of and we don't have to do any of this nowadays, but I'm thinking back early, trying to find prey or catch prey to eat. It'd be really difficult if you didn't have smooth mode. Throwing, or somebody throwing a rock at you, or something coming at you, you couldn't see it to duck, because it would just be, there's a rock, and then boom, it hits you in the head. So this, having the ability to see motion and process it as smooth motion, really is important for survival as us as a species.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
know that it's modular. It's time is constructed in the brain, um, because this happens over time. So yeah, it's really fascinating.
It is fascinating, the motion part. But now when you add in predictive
Hmm.
ability, the time component, how all of those are so closely tied together that any disruption, a disruption like this. So what about time? Do you know, like, someone with this disorder, is the sense of time in the brain off?
So not the sense of time, in the sense that, um, time passing, like it's been an hour, or
Hmm.
tomorrow I'm going to go do something. So all of that's intact.
Okay.
So I'm talking specifically about vision, how it constructs time of events happening in the moment, is what the brain puts together for
Okay. Okay.
vision. Yeah, I should have
Yes.
been clearer on that, but
No, no,
in the
no. That makes
moment,
sense now.
yeah, okay, yeah. So
And then
that's interesting.
let me go back though to, so these are all, everything that you've been talking about are motion illusions, not
Hmm.
optical illusions, by the way,
Hmm.
but motion illusions. And under those, because I want to make sure you gave some examples. Is it the
Phi
phi
phenomenon. Hmm.
phi phenomenon, which is actually movies.
Yeah, yeah. It's lights flashing on and off, or pictures coming one right after another. Hmm.
Okay, and that's a phenomenon. Did you say?
Yes,
Okay, so that phenomenon, uh,
but it creates the illusion of movement when
the
there's no
illusion of
movement
movement.
there. Hmm.
Okay. And so that's lights, patterns, pictures. That's phi.
Hmm.
Did you give another one?
Yeah, static motion, because you talked about the poster, and then I talked about
Mm. So
driving at
static
night.
static motion. That's another illusion,
Yes.
and that one
That's all
is
I think we've talked about, but there's
oh,
also the waterfall illusion. And
okay.
this is kind of a famous one. This is if you, and this again has to do with the neurons. If you excite a neuron, you cause it to fire rapidly. Over time, it starts to fatigue. It wears out, and it has to have a recovery time. So if you stare at a waterfall for 30 to 40 seconds, and then you look over at the bank beside it, the bank, the whole side of the hill looks like it's moving upward. And then it'll kind of reset, and then it'll move upward, and then it'll reset and flow upward, because you have this balance of cells. In M5 area, there's neurons that detect movement in a lot of different directions. And so they're all sending their kind of their baseline. There's baseline firings, but when one sees movement, it fires very rapidly. So it has a stronger signal than its opposing side. So if the down movement neurons are starting to fire very rapidly, then that overpowers the up movement. So that balance isn't there. So now you're
That's
perceiving the waterfall going down. But then when you look away, now that those down movement neurons are fatigued, so now they don't even fire at baseline levels. They very rarely fire. So now the upward moving, the neurons that detect upward movement, just at their base rate firing, are firing faster than the others. So now you get the illusion that, oh, something must be moving up. And it's the same thing with side to side. I used to, if you know, you've seen those spirals that start out really dim, then they get larger as they come out, the spirals.
yes,
And
yes.
you can have them circle, so it looks like either they're coming out at you, or everything's like imploding inward. So if you show somebody, I used to do this in class, I would put it on the screen and have everybody in the class, I would have a little point at the center, stare at that point at the center. So they're seeing, it looks like these circles are coming at them just for 30 or 40 seconds. And then I would say, now look at my nose. And when they would look at my nose, that those cells that have been making everything look bigger were now not responding. So it looked like my head was shrinking a little. And then it would come back to its size, and it would shrink, and they would all like die laughing. And then I would show them one where it's imploding, and then have them look at my nose. My head would get bigger to them, you know, and then reset. So it's all about that waterfall illusion, the waterfall effect. If you fatigue your neurons that detect motion in one direction, then when you stop looking at that, the other direction sends its signal. So whatever you're looking at looks like it's moving in the other direction when it's not.
And it's not that the counterbalance, the other neurons are firing faster or stronger. They're firing at their base rate. It's just the other neurons are exhausted and are
Yes.
firing much slower or not at all. And so for a couple of seconds, you get
So
that extra energy.
picture every all the neurons kind of walking at the same pace, but then one group runs ahead, but then they have to stop and put their hands on their knees and breathe as you walk past them. So it's just that walking. And speaking of walking, the treadmill does the same thing. If you jog on a treadmill for a while, because you're moving, so your proprioception is I'm moving, but your visual world is everything standing still. So when you get off the treadmill and stop, it feels like you're going backwards. You like grab something because you get the feeling that you're drifting backwards, because it's that opposite
Yeah.
effect. So that's a part of the waterfall illusion.
Oh, oh. But that's got to do with your vision is static, but your body feels like it's moving.
Yeah. So then when you stop, your vision's still static, but your body's going, but I'm not keeping up with this static motion. So I must be drifting backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And it's not just vision. So people have looked at this with putting sensors on your skin and having the sensors like go off in a line where they like give a buzz on your skin across like a line. And
Hmm.
if you do that over and over, then pretty soon, if you just have it stay in one place, it feels like it's going in the opposite direction. So it's kind of like a cross modal illusion. And then also if you spin in a chair for a while, they're in one direction, which I don't recommend, or if you're on a merry-go-round, uh, the hair cells in your cochlea, which is your ear that for hearing, they help give you balance and a sense of balance. They start bending one way because that fluid, they're sitting in a fluid. So when you're spinning around, the fluid's kind of moving in one way and bending the hair cells in that way. And they become fatigued. So when you stop spinning, they're sending the signal. It feels like you're moving in the opposite direction that you were just spinning. So the whole idea of adaptation and fatigue is kind of across the board with neurons and cells in the brain.
That makes sense. I mean, they're neurons. No matter where the neurons are, they're going to operate kind of
They
on the
didn't
same.
know we were going to trick them so much. They just were
Yeah,
built to do something, and we started
yeah,
tricking them. So
yeah. But the
the
idea, again, of neurons for all of these illusions getting fatigued, and then for just a second or two, or however long, the opposite effect. Where again you step
mhm.
off that fair or the carousel, and you kind of feel like you
Whoa,
just get
yeah.
that weird feeling of like you're going the other way when you're not even on it anymore.
Sometimes even on an escalator, just that little short ride, you go whoop to get to the top. It's kind of a whoop for a moment.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
yeah.
just me getting older. But speaking of getting older, when I watch kids play video games, like on a big screen, like where they're controlling the person, it's one of those like first person games or whatever they call them.
Hmm.
I get so nauseous and like seasick. I can't watch those games. Does that happen to you, or do you play those? Don't you?
I play them, but maybe not with video games. But I am noticing there are certain rides, there are certain things. There's even me, like even spinning around too many times. You said spinning in a
Hmm.
chair, and I immediately went,
Yeah,
"I'm not doing that."
yeah.
Uh, because as I'm getting older, I feel like I'm more prone to motion. I guess sickness. I
You
don't,
are.
whatever you want to call
No,
it.
as you get older, you do. Yes, that's true.
And I never had these problems before. I was, you could put me on any ride, you could put me
Yeah.
on spinning, go whatever, and I was fine. And now it's kind of like here's what's funny. We were talking about illusions, but uh, I'm somewhere in my brain. I can look at a ride and go, "It's not for me." I can't explain it, but I'm not going on that
I
thing.
can go on that one, but not that one.
Not that one.
Yeah, your back channel saying, don't do that to us. But you see little kids just go in circles for so long, just keep going and going. You're like, oh my
Yes.
goodness, I'm so
Yes.
sick just watching you do that. And it
Yeah.
doesn't phase them. And yeah. But gaming, there's what's called the VR hangover, where everything just kind of feels off after you've played for a while. I've never
Oh,
played to get to that point, but I've heard about the VR hangover. And it's because there's a mismatch between what you're seeing. You're seeing all this movement, but your vestibular system isn't detecting any movement. So that mismatch is what can make you feel kind of seasick and motion sick. And then if you play it long enough, even sometimes the next morning when you wake up, you're still not feeling, you have this VR hangover type effect that
I
I've
have
heard
not
of.
heard of that. That makes sense,
Okay.
though.
Okay.
That makes sense because I'm
Yeah.
sitting still, but I'm sensing all this motion
Hmm.
for a long time, and then when I turn it off,
But you're only
then
sensing it visually.
right,
Yeah.
right. I guess that's what I was trying to say is by saying I'm sitting still, like the only sense that is
Hmm.
taking in motion is vision,
Hmm.
and there's a disparity there between again reality
Hmm.
of I'm seeing all this movement and motion, but I am in static.
Before video games, and before movies, I guess. So we're talking about 100 years ago, 120
Well,
years
yeah,
ago,
100 over 100.
a
Yeah.
little over 100, but not much over 100.
No.
Uh, there, you only experienced, I can't think of another example, but when you experience motion, you experienced it vestibularly and visually. I mean, unless you close your eyes. But I mean, as long as your eyes were open, if you were seeing motion, you were also feeling it. But then movies and video games have cut those in two, where those can be two separate things, and that's what gives us the weird effects. And
Well, that's interesting. I didn't think about. Wow. Okay. So movies come around in the 20s, roughly
Mm-hmm.
1920s.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I mean, lighting, I'm trying to think of all the examples you've given. None of that existed.
No,
So
not
if there
none.
was motion, it was because I was
Because
moving.
something
I
was
mean,
moving.
I
Either you or
mean,
something else was moving
me or
is when you saw
something was
motion.
moving.
That's what I'm saying.
And
These neurons were built for a reason. Then all of a sudden, we found all these ways to trick them.
yeah, we started messing with them.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it's interesting.
wow. That's that part right there. There's been so much that you've said in the last hour, but that part really, uh, that's, that's blowing my mind the most, is that
Mm-hmm.
they were built for a specific, they were supposed to work a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, of course, come along and find ways to mess with it.
To
But
mess them up, yeah, to make
wow,
it to confuse them,
to
and
confuse
that's
them.
what illusions happen usually in the lab. You can is where you test them a lot, but they also happen in the real world. But it's usually humans have set something up to create the illusion. Like
Right.
in the natural in our natural environment, our eyes are very rarely, if ever, tricked. It's just when you build something or you're in a laboratory and build something that you can trick the brain in that sense.
It's
So
kind of,
really,
you have to intentionally trick.
mm-hmm.
It has to be built based on research or science or whatever to go, we can trick the eyeballs. Here's how we do it.
Yeah, like the picture with the squiggly lines, it looks like it's moving when it's not. And that could have been drawn 300 years ago. I don't know that it was. I think we started drawing things like that when we started figuring out some of these illusions. So those types of illusions, and where, so I shouldn't say they only happen. I'm wrong about that. They do happen in the natural environment. If you've got like two things that are lining up, you're trying to see which is the longest, like a log, a tree branch out there. It depends on, in context, what's near them, because one could look longer than the other just based on the contextual setting. When it's not longer, it's actually shorter. And that's a Mueller-Lyer uh, uh,
Effect.
illusion.
I think it's
Yeah,
called the
effect.
Mueller, the effect.
Okay, so yeah, where you look at two lines and one has arrows pointing one way and the other has it pointing the other way, and it looks like one's shorter and the other one's longer when they're the same length.
They're the
So
same. They're the
those
same
those
line.
types of things can happen, but it's more rare. It's like our
Yeah.
eyes are estimating, our brain is estimating which is most likely, because that's what you have to go with. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you want to sit and think about it for 5 minutes and then you're
Yeah.
exhausted.
And then you're exhausted. And then you just go ahead and cross the bridge and get the water with
Just
the
cross the bridge and get the water out
out
of
of
the
the
bucket.
bucket. Yeah.
Right.
That's easier.
That's my, uh, I mean, given them Greek names, I'm assuming this stuff, some of this has got to be around for hundreds of years, like you said.
So what tends to happen is that when uh, something different is discovered, people name it, and so they try to rely on some of the old words to name
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
So this was named, and I'm trying to I can't remember the all the Greek information about. I mean, I can't remember the Greek words, but I think we can break it down into. Hmm. Yeah, I can't remember
That's okay. I
what it
don't
stands
expect
for.
you to. This isn't a Greek translation podcast. This is about the brain, and
Yeah,
I
but
feel like you
akin
have.
stands for something. Opsia stands for, yeah. They each have some, but it just means the inability to see
Sure.
motion.
Yeah, sure. Just say
Yeah.
that. Just say that. But I mean, listen, you just did an hour on me looking at a picture in the mall. So I would say that, Greek aside, that's pretty darn impressive. Uh, I had a crazy question about some moving picture that I saw, and
Yeah.
you blew my mind with the movie thing. That's still I'm gonna lose sleep over that tonight, because somewhere in my brain I was like, no, they're a bunch of people on a movie set, and this thing is filming it, and then I watched the film. That's how this works. But the idea that, I mean, I know you're right. It's taking millions of still photos at a fast enough rate that when I watch them, that
Hmm.
it's a static. picture I'm watching, but it's fast enough that it in my brain it's smooth motion. It's happening.
Yeah, and you know me, I couldn't let that go. I had to just type it in and look it up.
Oh,
Uh, a
what's it mean?
kinetopsia, the A, because it starts out with A, it's Kinetopsia.
Okay.
A kinetopsia
Yeah, I'm not going to try to
is
say it, but go ahead.
A stands for without. So anytime like typical, and then it's atypical means without being typical. So the A
Okay.
is without. And then canine, I guess, is to move. In Greek means to move. And
Okay.
then opsis is seeing. So it's kind of like without and then move
Without
is seeing.
seeing
So it's
movement.
move without, yeah, or without seeing
Without
movement.
seeing
Yeah.
movement.
hmm Yeah. So
Oh.
that's how the Greek words are. The
Oh.
Greek, how it's put together to make the word to say motion blindness, the inability to see motion.
Yeah, but now I'm just going to say it's without seeing movement. That's the.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you looking the word up because I am fascinated about words and what
Yes.
they mean. So that's beneficial for me. That's helpful.
Good. Good.
Anything else about illusions? Not optical illusions, motion illusions.
No, I think that I just think there's so many, examples that we experience every day. Just seeing movement itself is so fascinating because again, it's something our brain is creating and it's so good at it. Just think about a baseball player. We're in the playoffs, so think about a ball being hit to a center fielder and they immediately start running to the spot that the ball is going to be. Like, how are we able to do that? And if you interrupt that smooth motion, that optic flow, they lose track of the ball. Like if you try to if you add a strobe effect, even a light strobe effect, where it's just a little bit of a change, so they can still see there's still light all the time, but you're strobing behind it or in addition to it, they can't track a ball very well.
Oh, that
Um,
I mean that I and watching the playoffs, there's some stadiums, some ballparks that at certain times of day, the sun and the shadows
mm-hmm.
move in a way that I'm just like, whose idea? I mean, is
Yeah.
that maybe they built it
No,
for
that
that
can add
reason,
to it. That
but
can add to it.
it starts off in the shadow and moves into the sun, or vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to track this fly ball into center field, and they lose it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Through because of the shadows, and it's in the light, and then it's in the shadows, or it's back in the light, or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
really hard to track that and that type of movement and judge where it is. So it's the brain just uses heuristics again, shortcuts. But I think the latest research, as far as I know, is that it's a shortcut around optical acceleration. So if that ball, when you look at it, if it looks like it's accelerating upwards, that means you're too close. You got to run back really fast. If it's accelerating downward, it's you're too far back. You've got to run in to get it. Or side to side is the same thing. So uh, from as far as I know, it's about the way people judge, the way your brain judges it is if that optic flow on your eye as you're running, it's static. So if you're heading in the right direction at the right speed, the ball becomes static in your eye rather than moving one way up or down or around, because if it's moving those ways, you've got to readjust where you're running to get to it, so your brain makes those calculations for you. It's just crazy. And baseball players will sometimes stop and look, see where the fence is, and then look back to catch it, but you're still taking the same strides as a quick look away and look back. But sometimes that can mess them up, but with practice they get better at that. And a lot of them don't look, like they just
Yeah.
stay right on the ball and they'll just plow into the wall or whatever. And yeah, so it's so fascinating, and that's all because your brain has created area M5, that little tiny area, and there's two areas, one on each hemisphere, but that's the part that adds that smooth motion to the pictures in your head. The internal images being created, that area adds that motion. So amazing. It's so amazing what our brains do and how they calculate stuff. And we didn't even get into how AI does this, because now programs have been built for cars, self-driving cars. They use kind of it's different in some ways, but some ways it's similar to how our brain works. We're building, cars that can self-drive based on, detecting objects and movements and things like that. It's really fascinating.
Yeah,
So maybe someday we'll talk about that.
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to talk about that. I went a couple weeks ago. We're looking at a new car, this Kia electric car, and one of the selling points, the salesman takes out his phone, and the car, no one's in the car. The three of us are standing by the car,
Yeah.
and he says, "Yeah, and if you want to back out of a parking spot if it's real tight or whatever," and he just hits a button, and the Kia starts backing up on its own. And we were
That's
like,
crazy.
what? And then he goes, yeah. And if you hit the button and it starts backing up, and he walks behind the car, like within 3 feet of it, and the car just stops. And the reason I said it like I did is because he had the utmost confidence. He's done that enough times. He knew that car was going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sensed a person behind it, and it just stopped right there.
That's so amazing. It's crazy what we're being able to do now. Some people are afraid of it. I love it. I can't wait till I like driving, but I like looking around instead of driving, and then like dozing off and napping a little bit and then looking at the scenery. And that's not good to do those things when you're driving. So I can't wait to have a car that just drives where I can just sit and look around or read for a little bit or nap, or that's right down my alley. I know there's airplanes, but you don't get to see scenery like you do in a car. So
yeah.
I'm excited for this new technology to come take over.
Well, at least there's one person, I guess, that's looking forward to AI taking over. But
we said last time that if you're nice to AI now, that maybe
it'll take care of you in the future.
You said that. This guy was nice. Oh,
no,
I said that. Okay.
You said that.
It'll say, this guy's nice. Let's not hurt him.
No, I don't believe that for a second. I think once AI realizes that humans are the problem, we're going to be in a Terminator situation.
You don't think they'll say humans are the problem, except for this guy who would always
this
say
one guy. This one guy, he was nice to us, so we're going to spare him. John, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I had fun. What I thought to be a fairly elementary question for you, and you filled an hour easily.
Hey, you got that right in my wheelhouse. I love
motion
talking about
illusion.
Visual system, and anytime you have questions about vision, ask them, because that's fun for me.
And I guess it makes sense. I wasn't even thinking about vision. I know now that I was asking about vision. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize where this was going to go. I was thinking about something in the brain, but obviously it's vision.
My brain did this, which was true.
Yes, but I didn't credit vision enough in the process of what was happening. So yeah.
Okay.
So I thank you for that.
Yes.
Greatly.
You had my neurons firing on that one. That was exciting.
I love to hear it. So yeah, anything else?
I don't know. I think that's it.
Okay.
Just keep your neurons firing too. Like you just got mine firing. Keep yours firing. We're all good.
Done and done. Right. Thank you. So everybody out there, the same plea I make every week, like, subscribe, follow the show. If you liked it, tell a friend, a loved one, a coworker. If you loved it, tell two. We're having a lot of fun, but it would be nice to get more people listening to this, more people interacting with us on social media. I think that the one untapped area for us is like some comments and questions on Blue Sky, TikTok, anywhere that you find us on social media, and also John's personal TikTok, brain_dude. Even if you hit him up there with questions, I hopefully he's not upset that I volunteered that for him, but I know him. I think he would like that. Yeah, I think you would like that, wouldn't you?
I would. That'd be great. I'd love it.
Yeah. So let's if you're listening to the show and you have questions or you have comments, even if it's you can't believe how dumb I am, that's okay too. I just want to interact. So hit us up, leave some comments, ask some questions, and until next week, take care of yourselves.
brain juice shone.